Despite its impressive economic growth, India is home to over 1/3 of the global poor. The World Bank estimates some 456 million people are living below the poverty line, unable to access proper medical care, shelter or food. And the most vulnerable among them are children. I'm Fauzia Ibrahim. In this edition of 101 East, we look at how India's struggling families sacrifice their children to survive. Adoption is always a painful, emotional process, even more so if you discover your child was stolen from its biological family and sold to an orphanage. Sally Sarah reports on a trafficking racket that preys on India's poor.
This village north of Chennai is the home of SUNAMA and her 5 children. It's a small house filled with love and hopes of a better future. But for 10 years, SUNAMA lived with an agonising loss. Missing from this home are her 2 eldest children. In 1996, they were taken away and sold by their drunken father for the equivalent of $50. The children, aged 2 and 3 years old, were traded by child traffickers.
I wept. I also tried to hang myself so I could die. Everything was pointless without my kids. I swallowed medicines, drank kerosene oil. I was admitted to a hospital for a month. Then I swallowed pills so I could die.
The uncertainty was excruciating. She didn't even know if her children were dead or alive. But AKIL and SABILA were happy and healthy on the other side of the world in the suburbs of Canberra in Australia. AKIL, now 15, and his 14-year-old sister have become part of a family of 8 children, including 6 adoptees.
This is the first time I'd ever seen you guys for real. And here you are coming up to the front office.
Julia and Barry Rawlings had always believed that AKIL and SABILA had been given up by their sick parents. This is the moment Julia Rawlings first set eyes on AKIL and SABILA at an orphanage called Massos on the outskirts of Chennai.
Oh, look at you. You are cute. Whether you like it or not, you were very cute.
But soon the Rawlings began reading reports that the Massos orphanage had been caught up in a kidnapping scandal. They started to doubt the story they'd been told about AKIL and SABILA's origins. The Rawlings felt they owed it to their children to search for their biological mother, despite the dangers.
My overriding fear was that we might lose the children, that there may be some legal avenue that we could end up in a situation that whatever our motives for searching might be, that we might find another family that were demanding the return of their children.
After months of waiting, an email arrived from one of the Rawlings' contacts in India. The message was short and shocking. AKIL and SABILA had been taken from their mother and sold to an orphanage by their father. They felt they had to tell the children.
Oh, the 2 words I just remember is the stolen and sold. There really wasn't any way of beating around the bush. We just had to find the words to try and say it.
The Rawlings are planning a return to Chennai to spend time with AKIL and SABILA's biological family. This will be their 2nd visit.
It's very important for me because I really want to see them and spend most of the time with them. And yeah, I just really can't wait to see them and spend time.
SABILA is also looking forward to seeing her birth mother again and the chance to teach her sisters some dance steps.
Yeah, it's just where I come from. And so that's another thing to remind me of my background and everything.
So you're quite proud of it by the sounds of it?
Yeah.
It's impossible to get an accurate picture of the true extent of child trafficking in India. But one thing is clear, it's been going on for years. In Indian terms, there's big money to be made, and the temptations are everywhere. She looks the same as you. In a tiny rooftop apartment, I met Fatima and her husband Salia. Time hasn't diminished the loss and the anguish they feel for their lost daughter, Jabeen.
It's a bond of pure love between a mother and a child. How can I describe it? How can a mother forget her daughter?
It was late in 1998 and Jabeen had only been out of her mother's sight for a moment. She was snatched from the street by a woman travelling in an auto rickshaw.
I wept. Had someone done something to my daughter? Had she been killed? I cried and prayed to Allah.
We now know that Jabeen is alive and living in Australia. I showed Fatima and Salia a photograph of their daughter, who is now 13. The traffickers changed the child's name and claimed she had been surrendered by her mother. She was adopted by an unsuspecting Australian couple who are now aware of the truth but have chosen to maintain their privacy. By law, we can't identify her. The case is now before the courts. To find out how a child snatched from the streets could have been adopted to Australia, I met Fatima and Salia's lawyer.
The papers relating to Jabeen.
GEETHA Devarajan claims Jabeen was sold by traffickers to an orphanage called MSS. She says corrupt orphanage officials forged the relinquishment papers.
There is no proper procedure or guidelines as far as relinquishment. Anybody can walk into any organisation and relinquish a child. That is the existing procedure.
This is the organisation where Jabeen is alleged to have been brought. The charity known as MSS runs a school and an orphanage. Police have claimed in court that in the late 1990s, dozens of children were sold to MSS by traffickers. Most of them were adopted, some overseas. Jabeen was one of them. I confronted the president of MSS, VATSALA Ravindrananath, who's been charged over the scandal and freed on bail. I showed her Jabeen's forged relinquishment papers that claim she'd been surrendered by a woman who was a single mother.
Can you tell me who the witnesses are on these documents? Do you know them, or were they just people off the street?
They're our staff only.
They're staff?
This person was expired yesterday, day before yesterday it seems.
What do you mean?
He died.
Which one?
He was a staff of us at that time.
Mr. Silverman?
Sivaraman.
He died yesterday.
Day before yesterday.
The big flaw in the system is that the orphanages oversee the surrender of children without any adequate checks by government. It's an open door for the traffickers.
Children are so vulnerable in that situation, especially poor and children who come from difficult background. This will not happen to any upper class, any well-to-do family. It only happens with poor families. The easy target is children who are on the street playing or sleeping, and where the parent or working parents or they don't have a proper residence to protect the children from these kind of vultures. They just take the child and disappear. And once these children get into these orphanages, it's a big screen where nobody can penetrate.
The MSS organisation has now been banned from adopting children. This letter is from an Indian agency set up to scrutinise adoptions. It claimed the MSS orphanage had a history of misrepresentation, falsifying records, and even threatening the relatives of children in its care. The letter was sent to Australian Family Services departments in 1995, 5 years before the stolen child Jabeen was adopted. After months of planning, the Rollings are finally in Chennai, where AKIL and SABILA were trafficked. And finally, SUNAMA gets to see her children again. It's an awkward but moving moment. The two mothers of the same children have a precious bond. AKIL and SABILA's father fled after he sold them. SUNAMA remarried and had 5 more children before their father died. After a cautious start, the two families warmed to each other's company. But on this reunion, the Rollings and SUNAMA are also asking questions. How could it be that AKIL and SABILA were traded by a reputable orphanage? They've hired a lawyer to go to court to get hold of the surrender documents for the children. They want to prove that SUNAMA, an illiterate woman, did not sign the papers to give up her children.
Basically, these are the documents that we're going to seek from the court. Yes.
They ask SUNAMA to sign her name to check it against the signature on the surrender documents.
And is that what's on the document?
No.
It's not?
No.
Okay.
The name is perfectly written like this.
It's written in script?
It is.
Okay.
It seems a woman claiming to be AKIL and SABILA's mother may have accompanied their father to the orphanage. Another possibility is that the orphanage itself was in on the scam. BALAJE THANGAVEL was in charge of adoptions in 1998 when AKIL and SABILA were here.
Now you're smiling.
He agreed to meet us.
The biological father himself has signed the document saying that this is my wife. So we had to believe it.
She didn't come and surrender those children. It's not her signature on the document, so she didn't know where they were.
Maybe she was denying the fact. Maybe she's denying the fact.
So you don't believe SUNAMA?
We don't believe SUNAMA.
SUNAMA denies being there on that day, and the Rollings believe her. They paid the orphanage $3,400 during the long process of adopting the children, an attractive amount of money for any cash-strapped institution. For SUNAMA, her loss of 10 years has had a happy turnaround. But Fatima and Salia, the parents of Jabeen, the little girl snatched from the street, want her Australian parents to let them see her again.
I hope she will come here, that they will show her to me. I have hope.
After the break, we look at how some Indian mothers are renting out their wombs for badly needed cash. Stay with 101 East.